For all kinds of American history, we had discrimination against black people. That doesn't mean we need to continue it. For all kinds of American history, women weren't allowed to vote. That doesn't mean we need to continue that. This is a fallacy called the argument from tradition. But guys, I'm so tired about talking about Micheal Knowles. I'm so tired about going over this man's inane ramblings. But unfortunately, we got more to do. Guys, apparently there's an entire plan that Micheal Knowles wants to put forward that would involve stripping away things like gay marriage, which we know that the Republican Party has been trying to push for a while anyway. But let's go ahead and take a listen after we get into the fan art section. The first one we have here is from XLR. When the summoning spell fails and you become a ghost as a result. Huh. I used the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, didn't I? Well, damn. This sucks. This is a witch Suris failing at a summoning spell and being stuck as a spoopy ghost. No. And then, I'm gonna be honest, this piece of fan art probably needs the song Open Your Heart playing behind it. But, this is from Calderulfer. I am 10 years removed from the last time I drew anything, so I'm using you as a guinea pig to help me refamiliarize myself with Photoshop tools and rediscover my style. We have Lord Dumpy as Perfect Chaos, destroying Station Square, fighting Supersonic. I wasn't aware that Lord Dumpy had these kinds of destructive powers, but, you know, we all have our own styles that we won't change. Yours is filled with evil. Mine is not. As always, everybody, thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get right into the video because we've got some awful things to talk about.
Now, even many conservatives accept so-called gay marriage.
So-called gay marriage? You mean a marriage between people who are gay for each other? That's not so-called gay marriage. That's just marriage. That's all it is. Also, Constance is talking about this this piece right here. That's the art that Constance is asking you guys about. So encourage what you think you need to, chat. Do it accordingly.
And they have to. They have to accept gay marriage if they accept the illogic of the sexual revolution, which held that all sexual relations are fine and dandy so long as they're consensual.
I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that. Isn't that, like, literally just a cornerstone of freedom? Like, hey, we are free to do things. One of those things is fuck.
After the sexual revolution, the only test for sexual ethics became, if it feels good, do it.
I mean, no. Because here's the thing. If somebody else does not consent to the sexual thing, then that's... if feeling good doesn't matter anymore. They didn't consent to it. There are people who can even get off in a sexual encounter, but if they didn't consent to the encounter in the first place, for instance, if they were under the effects of something like Rufalin, they didn't consent to the thing happening. It just feeling good is not enough and is not accepted as enough and has never been accepted as enough. Also, Eros, thank you for redeeming your points for an owl. But let's go ahead and see what, you know, Party of Freedom dude Mike Knowles has to say about stripping freedoms away from people.
For most of American history, nobody believed that. For most of American history, there were all sorts of laws against certain sexual behaviors.
And that's not an argument. That's just a statement. For all kinds of American history, we had discrimination against black people. That doesn't mean we need to continue it. For all kinds of American history, women weren't allowed to vote. That doesn't mean we need to continue that. This is a fallacy called the argument from tradition. Now, you can say something that was traditionally done, and that thing can be a good thing, but saying that it is good or needs to be continued because this was the standard back then is not an argument and can never be one.
There were famously laws against sodomy, but there were lots of other laws as well. Laws against fornication, laws against adultery, laws against plenty of other destructive sexual behaviors.
So let's talk about fornication. Fornication is just sexual activities outside of marriage, and sodomy is anything that, it depends. Some states define sodomy as only anal sex. Some states define sodomy as that thing that Constance has redeemed. You fucking degen. Sodomy is sometimes referred to as oral sex as well. It depends on which state you're in. Here's the thing. I cannot think of anything destructive about those acts on their own. If you decide to give somebody a blowjob, or you decide to go on the one man's quest to try desperately to find the clit, that does not have its own level of destruction. I mean, except when you fail to find it and then you question your abilities for the rest of your life. I mean, that might actually do it, but, you know, I'm not here to talk about your skill set. I'm here to talk about the fact that on its own, this won't destroy you. It's not a destructive thing. And fornication, premarital sex. Marriage is just an agreement that you and another person are going to stay together for an amount of time. And when you stay together for that amount of time, you're going to actually, in many cases, risk the stuff that you own with that person. You're kind of betting with that person that you guys are going to stay together. Now, that's not to say that marriage is a bad thing. There's plenty of legal benefits that come from it, and there's a lot of fantasy involved in the idea of marriage, the wedding, the getting together, the committing the rest of your life together, the combining of two families together. There's a lot of things that come with the idea of marriage, and there's a lot of fantasies that come with it as well. I don't think marriage in itself is the worst thing in the world, but I don't think that saying that you should only be able to have sex with somebody after you've signed that slip of paper, I don't think that makes any sense, because you don't know if you're compatible with that person in that way. You might find that you're kind of gay, and you don't know that because you're saving yourself for the perfect person, and you think you find that perfect person, and then you guys get together and you wonder, why can pee-pee no get hard? Pee-pee no get hard. Why pee-pee no get hard? Well, probably because you're gay. Or you may find other things. Doesn't matter. You may find that you're just not sexually compatible. Let's see here. You may go into a relationship finding out that you are a hard sub, and the other person you're with is also a hard sub, and neither of you are willing to, or even able to, get into a dominant headspace for the other person. This could lead you in a situation where the only type of thing you guys can do together is run-of-the-mill vanilla sex. And if that's the only thing you can do together, there may be a time where that just becomes a bit boring and that doesn't become enough for you anymore. There may be a time where you realize, oh, I can't actually experience the things I want to experience in life with my partner, and my partner doesn't get to experience the things they want to experience with me. These are things you can figure out earlier on by having sex before marriage. There's literally a practical way to discover these things. It's called fucking. It's called doing the do. It's called playing birds and the bees and sticking your birds in her bees. There's lots of ways you can go about it. I don't care how you do it so long as it's consensual. Point of the matter is, these are not destructive behaviors, and in fact, these are actually beneficial behaviors in several circumstances. But go on, Michael, explain to us why these are actually bad, actually.
Those laws were on the books as recently as 2003, when liberals on the Supreme Court discovered in the Constitution some sort of right to all of those things. Not quite sure where they found it. I think it may have been written in invisible ink by James Madison. It was a little trick to future generations.
So here's the thing. None of that matters. I understand that this is all coming from a constitutional originalism setup, like things that the Founding Fathers originally intended. But if you take this exact line of reasoning, then you're going to find that, oh, wait a minute, we can't have things like black people not being slaves. There's a lot of things that we've had to change about the Constitution, amend to it. It doesn't matter if something's originally written in the Constitution. What we need is argumentation that demonstrates that something is necessary for the people who are living and breathing today. The Constitution was always envisioned as a living document, a document that would be reinterpreted and would be updated over the years to the needs of the people in the nation, our nation. Michael, to try to argue that, oh, well, this thing wasn't written explicitly in the perfect type of ink and the perfect set here where we are, I'm sorry, I don't believe that that matters. Maybe I'm just a bad American when I say I don't give a shit about the Constitution. I give a shit about people. I give a shit about lived experiences. I give a shit about people who love each other. I understand from a legal standpoint the Constitution matters. Understand from my standpoint, I don't give a shit. But anyway.
But in any event, the Supreme Court says it's all there. Now, even many conservatives defend the alleged right to these sorts of behaviors.
Because there's nothing wrong with them. Like, again, if you're going to be the party of small government, if you're going to be the people that want maximal freedom for everybody, then you need to accept that these types of arbitrary restrictions on people don't serve any purpose other than getting your rocks off about puritanical culture. And then the only people that can engage in these acts are the people with enough money to fight the court cases when they are accused of them.
A right to fornication. And they have to believe in such rights if they accept the illogic of feminism, which is the topic that we are here to discuss. Feminism, which sits at the origin of the gender debate, because it was the feminists who first insisted that men and women are pretty much exactly the same.
I mean, yeah, like the distinctions between us are kind of small. Like, okay, there are certain differences like gray matter and white matter in the brain, but even then, those differences are not 100% across the board. The argument is not that we are the same 110%. Humans are humans. We have variance across gender and variance across races, but what matters is that we are able to be treated equally. We are able to operate equally. We are able to operate equally in a society. That's what feminism argues. It argues that if you're a human and if I am a human, then why can't we operate the same way? Now, there are toxic aspects of feminism that have bred themselves in the deep, dark recesses of Tumblr, but that's not what Michael's talking about here. He's talking about literally just the idea of people being fucking equal. That's all he's talking about.
It wasn't the transvestites, it wasn't the homosexuals, it was the feminists. The feminists who said a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. The feminists who burned their bras, who loosened divorce laws, who weakened the family as the fundamental political institution.
So the family never needed to be the fundamental institution of anything. Families should be a choice, and a nation should be able to survive with or without that fundamental institution. Loosening divorce laws. This is actually a good thing, because when people get on the shit end of the stick of relationships in both genders, they need the ability to get out of them. They need the ability to escape. They need the ability to live their own individual lives that do not involve being strapped to somebody who is abusive. And that goes for all genders. It goes for people on the feminine extreme. It goes for people on the masculine extreme. It goes for people anywhere in between. It doesn't matter. When you argue that feminists broke society, you have to ask yourself, what things in society was it breaking? And did those things deserve to break? I would say when it comes to things like voting rights, when it comes to things like divorce proceedings, largely, they broke things that needed to be broken. Now, there's still things that need to be fixed, especially when it comes to divorce proceedings, like how resources are allocated between men and women, how often women are the only ones who are able to get kids. There are things that we need to be addressing, and there are fundamental ways that we can be working towards progress there. That's the thing about progress. It's not a goal, it's a process. And it's a process that we, as humans, as flawed individuals, will always be working towards. We will always be trying to find a way to patch up the sinking ship that is humanity. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, actually, I advocate for that even if we ultimately fail in that. I've been a staunch advocate for years on my channel for the concept of the long defeat. The idea that even if we are in a position where we know we will ultimately fail, there is enough merit in the fight to keep pushing forward and keep improving things for future generations, that it doesn't matter if it's ultimately doomed because all of humanity is going to fry in the sun one day. None of that fucking matters. What matters is making things better in the here and now and for future generations incrementally. The better we can get it for the people in the future, the better they will live, and hopefully they will carry that torch and make things better for their people in their futures. Human beings suck. Feminism, for whatever flaws it may find itself with, has largely been a movement to try to get things to more equal terms, because it was birthed during a time where women did not have equal rights to men. Largely, on paper, most of the rights between the two main genders have been ironed out. Most of them. There are still issues with lived experience that need to be handled, though. Just like when slavery was abolished, there were still several laws on the books that were more beneficial towards the white folk than the black folk, and that needed to be addressed as well. But again, progress is not a goal. Progress is a process.
Sure, conservatives opposed them for a time, but now many, if not most conservatives, consider themselves to be, to some degree, feminists.
And that's a good thing. Moving that Overton window just a little bit in a bit of a wonky way is a good thing.
But they should not. They should not, because feminism has made everybody miserable, especially women.
So here's the thing. There are people on the cesspool areas of the internet that have taken the ideas of feminism into the kill all men roots and the all men are trash roots. And yeah, those people exist, and yeah, those people are largely miserable. But guess what? Those people were going to be miserable with or without feminism. Those were people whose constitution was such that they could not live without trying to victimize somebody else or themselves constantly. Feminism was not the fault of that. The ideology of equality that feminism tries to push for was not the reason that those people became miserable. They became miserable because they decided to twist an ideology that, again, largely tries to push for equality between sexes, and instead twisted it into something more akin to an what's the word I'm looking for? I almost said authoritarian complex, then I almost said victim complex, but it's neither of those things, but it's certainly something in between those ideas. People do this all the time with men's rights activism as well, where they take the ideas of men's rights activism, the idea that, hey, while we've been doing all of this progress to make things better for women, there have been a lot of people who have been put by the wayside during this conversation, and they need to have their issues addressed as well. But that side of the internet also largely exists as a toxic cesspool of self-defeating shit. Superiority complex might be the right one, Drasus. That might be the one I was looking for. That might be the one I'm looking for. People like Micheal Knowles would like to create a world where marriage equality is stripped away, where women do not have the right to divorce and women do not have things like the right to vote anymore. He would like to live in a world where things have been rewound to 60, 70, 80 some odd years ago. But I want to ask you, do you want to live in that world? Do you want to live in a world where women don't have equal rights to men? Do you want to live in a world where people are segregated by race? Do you want to live in a world where people largely are not able to take care of themselves and have to be dependent on governmental systems to guide them in their lives? I'm not talking about something like a welfare system that provides you with money and then from there you have your own agency. No. People like Micheal Knowles would love to live in a world that is theocratically fascist. They would love to live in a world where religion and government are the same thing. And this particular world, when properly combining, I say properly, it's not really proper at all, but when combining the ideas of government and religion as they have been combined in the past in America, and as they've been combined multiple times over the course of history in multiple other countries, they want to live in a world where they get to oppress people because they're on the right side of their book. Ultimately, the world that people like Micheal want is cruel, heartless, authoritarian, and worst of all, boring as hell. I don't know in how many words or in how many ways I can explain to you that despite the issues that whatever crowd happens to come up from whatever cesspool the internet might have, we all can agree that we don't want to return to a time where all genders don't have the same rights as each other. We don't want to return to that time. And if you think we should, then ask yourself why. If you've never used the Socratic method, maybe this is the time to learn it. When you have a belief, the scariest thing you can do to ask to yourself is ask yourself why you hold it. So if you believe that women shouldn't have the right to vote, or shouldn't be able to divorce as easily, or shouldn't be able to go to the workplace the way they do now, ask yourself why. Why do you hold that belief? And if you say it's because it's the natural order of things, ask why is that the natural order of things? Why is that okay? And if you find yourself saying that that's the way it's always been, congratulations, you found yourself in that traditional fallacy. Rewind and try again. Give yourself a different answer. Try on a different set of shoes. See if you can figure out why you believe this backwards-ass belief. And hell, if you're willing to do that exercise and you happen to have those beliefs, let me know in the comment section below how that exercise went for you. I may even do a video following up on some of those comments, because I'll be flabbergasted if anybody who's on that side of the aisle actually finished this video to get to this point to find this exercise. Zoomy Deer says, because my wife left me, and the more women who left me, the further and further to the left I went, as opposed to the right. Weird how that happens. Almost like my political metamorphosis was actually completely separate from any relationships I had. Except for, you know, all the information I was looking up to spite the one person I was dating who was a feminist. And then I found out they were right. And then I got mad at myself. Who knows? But that's Micheal Knowles, telling everybody how much of a fucking douche he is. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. And as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here.